Hey everyone, welcome to Financial Revelations. I am David Szafranski. It's almost Thanksgiving, and the good news about Thanksgiving this year is it's going to be twice the cost as last year. That's not really good news, but I'll have an economic update for you in just a second. As always, you can hear me on WCRF 103.3 Moody Radio every Thursday morning from 8 to 9, where I take questions, we answer texts, we do a lot of things. I'm trying not to joke around as much on that because I want to get to as many questions as we possibly can while we're on the radio. And you can always call here, 1-800-344-2534. Questions to Corey. All this is scrolling beneath me, but if you're listening, it's Corey, K-O-R-Y, at EPSF.com. You can also go to nativos.org, also scrolling. We're doing a fundraising campaign there for our next well-digging missions trip. And there's a GoFundMe. You could put in my name or Nativos USA at GoFundMe. And any amount helps. It really does. We want to pay for the well. And I want to take people that can't afford to go necessarily. So pastors, worship leaders, people that are in ministry. And we take a lot of people who can't afford to go. But if you want to be part of it, if you thought, hey, I want to be part of a mission trip, but I can't go to the middle of the jungle, this is one way to do it. So I want to start off today by giving you an economic update because some things have changed. And I think they're important. But I also think that they're not as meaningful as the market is making them. And so the economic update is that we've had a couple inflation numbers come out, and they were cool. They were, they weren't hot like they have been. They indicated that inflation is kind of lessening on a month-over-month basis. So what I don't want you to do is get confused with inflation is going down, because it is not. Since this inflation run started, we're 25% higher on prices. And all you need to do is go to the grocery store to know this is true, and that the economy's been mismanaged by the administration and by the Federal Reserve, in that they were way late to starting the fight against inflation. And now what's happening, and you've heard me say this before, the Federal Reserve and the administration are in a tug of war. The administration wants to spend and spend and spend and spend, because that's what's driving economic growth right now. And if that dries up, we're in a recession right away. Now, it's not going to dry up right away, but it is drying up. And the other thing that you have going on is that you have student loan repayments starting. That's going to drag a lot of money out of the economy. And as you listen to, it's earnings seasons right now, as you listen to the CEO of the big consumer companies like Home Depot, Target, Walmart, places like that, they're saying the same thing. The consumer is strapped. They are strapped. So the month-over-month inflation number came out, and it was flat. Prices did not increase month over month. And the market took off on this news. Rates came down. I think rates are going back up. And I think the Fed has one more rate hike in them. And I do think that the rate cycle, the interest rate cycle, is probably going to peak somewhere around February, March timeframe. But I'm not impressed yet. Flat inflation does not impress me. Costs are up so dramatically. There's this great YouTube video right now, or it's actually on Twitter, of this lady, and she's at the checkout line. And they're ringing up her groceries, and it's like she's having a baby. It is the funniest thing. You got to watch it. Very, very funny. And at the end of it, she almost passes out because, and this is real. This happens to people every day. You go to the grocery store, you got half a cart, and it's twice as expensive as what it should be. We're still there. Prices have not come down yet. They're nowhere near coming down yet. So flat inflation is not really a prize. And that's why I think we're going into a recession, because the Fed does want to reset some of that pricing. And the only way to do that is in a recession. And I think we're going into a recession the first quarter of 2024. So we've got to be ready for that. How do you get ready for a recession? Well, one thing, you've got to bolster your emergency fund. You've got to have that emergency fund as close to fully funded as possible. That's 3 to 6 months of have to expenses, and I want you to be there. That's got to be a goal for you. And, I don't think we're going to go into mass layoffs or anything like that. It doesn't look like that right now, but it is possible. Once a recession starts, it's really it's like once inflation starts, it's hard to control and you have to go a little bit out of your way to do it. And I think sometimes when a recession starts, the same thing happens. And I know I've seen administrations before where I thought, okay, it's not optimal, but we're doing okay. And the press keeps talking us into a recession. And in some ways, I think that's happening, but it's also, this administration will not stop spending money, and the Fed is going to win the battle. The Fed does not lose these battles. And the only time they really lost one in my lifetime is when Jimmy Carter was president, because they did such a bad job at managing inflation that they did lose the battle. Paul Volcker had to come in and raise rates to 14%. That's when mortgage rates were at 18. Could you imagine paying an 18% mortgage rate when we were refining at 2.5 just 3 years ago? It's just incredible how bad they have run this economy. And in that light, they invited the communist punk Xi from China to come to America, which he was in San Francisco. I don't think he's still here, but last night they had a dinner where the American CEOs were bowing at the feet of this murderous dictator for cheap labor. They have oppressed and killed the Uyghurs. That's where Nike shoes are made, by the way, by Uyghurs. So when LeBron James talks about inequity, remind him about where his shoes are made. I have nothing against LeBron James personally. I thought when he was here in Cleveland, he did everything we asked of him, and they weren't willing to build a team around him, so he left. He came back, he did win a championship here, and then he left again. So, he did everything we asked. But when it comes to economics, he's good at making money. There's no doubt about it. He's probably pretty close to being a billionaire. But I just love how the preaching comes out about what we should do when he's a billionaire. Easily said rather than done. But the Chinese dictator is here right now trying to form partnerships because China's in trouble. China has this demographic problem. One of the books on my book club is The Accidental Superpower, and it talks about the Chinese demographic issue where they had one-child policy for so many years. They can't convince people to have babies now, and consequently they have a lot of single males and a lot of elderly people, and they're not replenishing their population. There's a lot of people who believe that within the next 25 to 40 years, China's population is going to be half its current size. That's going to be very damaging to their economic output, and there's no way around it. You cannot right this ship fast enough, and these things are easily predictable because we could see the trends. They're happening right now. So China is not a place that I really want to invest in because they have a big problem. And a lot of the world has this problem because we've been preaching climate change and too many people, which is a lie. It's a total lie. There's not too many people on the planet. And we're about to find that out in a very real way. But environmentalists and eugenics and racism all are tied together. They're like a Venn diagram. And they all cross over most of their circles. But if you look back at the origins of environmentalism, it's all about hating black and brown people. And it was all about the lie of too many people on the planet even then. And nothing has changed. They've been telling the same lies for 100 years. They've never been right about anything. Just read up on Paul Ehrlich, who is a professor at Stanford. He's an environmentalist. He's never been right about anything, but he's a professor at Stanford. And people still take his advice, and he's wrong. He's never been right about anything. He's not been right about temperature. He's not been right about the price of commodities. He's not been right about the food supply. He's not been right about anything. And every time we encounter a problem where it looks like, oh, there might not be enough food, capitalism designs a way around it. We have more food now than we've ever had on the planet with more people than we've ever had. not one person should be starving on this planet. If they're starving, it's because of political unrest and food being stolen from places where it should go. That's really what starves people. So more food, more water, more clean food, more clean water, more clean air than ever before, with more people than ever before. So that environmentalism is a lie. Now, I love clean water and clean air. I want to breathe clean air. So when you think about it, Christians are the original environmentalists because everything is the Lord's, and all we want to keep the planet clean because we're in it. So we should be the original environmentalists. And if you just, we don't need to go to these extremes to do those things, but we have a responsibility to do, something. When the Cuyahoga River lit on fire, that was really the genesis of a lot of the environmental movement in law. And like everything, the EPA goes overboard. They keep staffing people. They need to continue their mission. They need to find new battles to fight. And so they just do too much. There's things that we're doing that we don't need to do. They're not necessary to have clean air and clean water. So don't fall into that trap and don't invest in China. I do want to answer some listener questions today. Number one, and I hear this question a lot towards the end of the year, and we got it on the radio today, but ballot harvesting. Harvesting losses. That's the investment question. What is harvesting losses? So let's say you own an individual stock and it's down, and you have a loss in that and you want to use it to offset some gains. So you sell that stock or mutual fund or whatever it is, and you got to stay out of it for 31 days. And then you can buy it back again. So if it's a stock that you think, well, I'm going to sell it at a loss, it's probably not going to go back up in those 31 days. I could buy it back at the same price or thereabouts and keep the loss. So that's harvesting losses. So you sell something that's down, and maybe you like it, but you want to buy it back. Just got to stay out of it for 31 days. You could buy it back and keep the loss. And then you use that loss to offset gains that you have in other things, assuming that you have it in other things. It's an idea that you use in non-qualified accounts. You don't use this in retirement accounts because in an IRA, there is no taxation inside of it. There's taxation when money comes out of it. So this is only for non-qualified accounts, your joint accounts, your non-IRA accounts that don't have tax preference. So in a non-qualified account, a dividend gets paid, it gets taxed. You take a gain, it gets taxed, and that you realize it. And if you want to offset some of those things, you do it with harvesting losses. So it's something that we do every year. I start, early December. I think there is going to be a year-end rally, so I'm not in a hurry to do it right now. But if you're talking about harvesting losses, that's what you're talking about. The other thing that I'm getting questioned about just came out in the paper this week is that Mint, the popular budgeting app, is going away. It turns out that in helping people save money and manage it wisely, there is no profit. And so Mint is going away. You're not going to be able to use it anymore. And I like, everybody should have a budget. It's one of the things that I preach all the time. Larry Burkett talked about it. I think it's very helpful. I use a budget. I have a budget at the office. We know what things cost. I use QuickBooks at the office. My accounting firm loves it because I can just ship them off documents via email. I don't have to mail things. It could happen very precisely and accurately and quickly. And I can also watch our costs because I could print off our monthly expenses and see, hey, where am I blowing the budget this month if that's happening? But there's a lot of good budgeting apps, but you're going to have to pay for it. Now, my favorite budgeting app at home is a Yellow Pad. We watch our costs pretty close. My wife is a budgeting assassin. She's very good with the details. She runs the budget at home. I run the budget at the office, so I get sick of budgeting, to be honest. So she does it at home. She's very good at it, and it's okay if one of you is better at money than the other, and they do the bills and they do the budgeting and things like that. Now, we sit down a couple of times a year and we talk over budgets, and where we're spending money and where we want to spend money in the future, and that's also okay. But, the best budgeting app for you, and I'm going to get this question, what's the best budgeting app? The one that you will use. So if you're very technologically oriented, you could snap a picture of a receipt and have it go right into your budget app and have it be classified as to where you're spending the money. So as long as you're doing the things that are necessary, as long as you are not running credit card debt monthly, so it doesn't mean you don't use your credit card, but you pay off the balance every month, as long as you have an emergency fund, as long as you know what your costs are, so you're spending less than what you're making, you're doing these things, I don't really care what budgeting app that you use. You just got to have a budget. You got to know what it costs for you to live every single month. And so for most people, that is an app because it's running a running total for you, and that's a good thing. So you know what it's costing. I do it on a pen and paper at home. We just like that. We put it on a computer, but essentially it's a yellow pad. At the office, I have accounting software, and it runs it for me. I could still overspend if I want, but just like you could. But you got to know these numbers. These numbers are really important if you want to be financially successful, if you want to retire at some point in time, if you want to have a nest egg, you got to do these things. These are the things that we do. And these are the things that you should be doing. And I don't really should on people a lot, but this is one I do. You should have a budget, and you should work your budget, and you should know when you're out of whack on your budget. And especially where it helps is when if your finances change, and it's not always for the worse, it could be for the better. You could get a big raise. And you could say, well, hey, these are places where I haven't really allocated a lot of money to. Now I can. If we go into a recession in Q1 and things get tight, these are things that you have your budget. You know where you can pull some money away from. That's why you have a budget. It's kind of a running total and, the highs and lows and all those things that go along with it. If you want to ask us about budgeting or any money thing, you can call us. We don't ring the register when people call. Because of my radio connection, I'll sit down with anybody who wants to come to my office. You don't have to pay. Now, I don't want people to abuse it and ask me, sit down with me for an hour to find out what credit card they should own. But if you wanted to ask that question, you can. You can email it to me. I'll take your emails and I'll answer them. Or Corey will. I am David Szafranski, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and the voice you can trust.